Oops. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Katrina VanHuss. We're going to give it just one more minute to allow people to get in. All right. We are 3 o'clock on the dot, so I'm going to jump in. My name is Katrina VanHuss. Probably most of you know me. I'm a founder of Turnkey For Good, and today we have a good story. What we do at Turnkey is look for trends and ways that we can help you address the market in front of you. And in doing that, I make my round of people in the profession, and I ask them, do you have a good story? What's unusual? What's unexpected? And Adam O'Brien of I Donate, he answered the call. He's like, girl, I got you. And so Adam, I want to thank you for bringing this story to us, and to I Donate for supporting this content. So with us today, thanks to Adam and I Donate, we have Jay Boyd. Jay is the Senior VP of Advancement and Engagement at Connie Maxwell Ministries. Jay, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Katrina. It's great to be here.
I am glad to have you. So between us, we have like a full Southern accent, like we each have half a Southern accent. So audience, you'll be dealing with that, but you'll also be dealing with my cold. So I am equipped with a tissue ready to go, but happily, Jay is very good at telling the story. So he'll be talking most of the time, and we'll all be better off because of that. So, all right. So Jay, first, I want you to tell us about Connie Maxwell's work.
Yeah. So Connie Maxwell Children's Ministries was in some ways birthed out of tragedy. And I got to share more of that because that sounds disheartening. But everybody says, well, who is Connie? Connie Maxwell Children's Ministries. Well, Connie was an 8-year-old girl who was the daughter of John C. Maxwell. And John Maxwell was a large landowner in our part of South Carolina. And his only daughter, so John was a traveling doctor. And as they did back then, they went and saw patients. He brought influenza into his home. Their only surviving daughter, Connie, contracted influenza and died. And so John, years later, he and his wife, who now do not have any children or heirs, the discussion among some of the Baptists in the area at the time into the 1800s, this was around 1890s, there was a need for an orphanage. And there was a lot of children that needed a place. And John said, I'll give you everything I've got. He owned about 1,000 acres, most of which we still have today. And he gifted, and he said, would you remember my daughter? And so the answer was yes. And so her legacy has lived on, and we've served over 20,000 children have come through our doors. We've blossomed into doing more. Of course, child welfare has changed over 130 years, as you can imagine. So we still have residential care, but we do a number of other programs too. So,
yeah. Wow, that is something beautiful out of tragedy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So a conversation that has been going on as long as I have been doing this, which is almost 36 years, is that silos are a problem. They're a problem for our industry. And typically when I'm in that conversation, what we mean is the silos within the revenue department, the peer-to-peer versus major gifts versus grants. All those things are so completely separate. Solving that would be great, but it feels to me when I heard your story that you had said, not only am I going to solve that, I'm going to solve all the silos at one time. So in your organization, correct me if I'm wrong, you are, as VP of Engagement, and Advancement, you are over, define all the areas of external engagement you're over.
Yeah. So, and I've got a great team of people around me. So let me say that, but under me falls people responsible for everything from major gifts and annual fund, our campaign. You've got volunteer engagement, you've got church engagement, marketing. And so kind of all of the things, whether it's mass communication driven or relationship driven, any kind of the external. And then the other piece of that was added a couple of years ago was even foster care, our foster care ministry, which I'm highly unqualified for in many ways, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But that's what kind of falls under my hat.
Okay. So originally then you had the volunteer management piece. And tell me how that piece impacted your ministry. I know we're going to talk about the foster family thing quite a lot, but tell me how the volunteer management piece being under your purview helped revenue.
Man, it's been, I'll say this, Connie Maxwell, for many years has been propped up by volunteers. And so we've got a massive campus. We've got 4 locations, but the campus I operate out of is huge. And when you got a lot of property, 9 children's homes, a family care ministry of homes with single moms and kids, there's a lot of upkeep, as you can imagine. And so the need for volunteers and just people to come and serve from a number of ways was always there. But a few years ago, I approached our president, and we were kind of in a transition phase where we had someone else doing that, and they had left and went to something else that they felt led to. And I said, hey, what if we tried this? What if we pulled that under, what if I led those initiatives? They had kind of previously been more tied to programs, which makes sense, right? You could see how that would have happened, because you're going to your program staff saying, hey, what do y'all need? What could people help with?
Yep.
And then there was a lot of coordination there, but really largely people who were coming in from the community or church groups that would come in, there was not a lot of communication happening between the volunteer efforts and the volunteers, and the engagement side, the fundraising side.
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, Danny, what if we thought about it more engagement? And he agreed. He thought it was great. He felt like it fit. We do a lot with churches. We have a lot of funding coming from people in churches. So the people that would come on this campus to give their time and volunteer. And so that was kind of how it started, was just that conversation. He agreed that it made sense. And so when we hired that role, we put it under here. And those, of course, programs and that role had to coordinate often. And so because people are good at what they do, they've, I think no matter where it would have landed in which department, it would have required a high level of coordination. So I don't know that people have to set up their shop the way we did, but I will say it has really helped. And the person overseeing volunteers, when they're sitting in our meetings and they're learning about fundraising, and they're seeing the big picture of how someone starts by getting on our mailing list, and then what takes them to making that first gift, and then the mail pieces that go out and the magazines, when they're hearing in our team meetings all the ways in which we're trying to cultivate relationships, both relationship and mass, they now start to think about the volunteers differently.
Oh, interesting.
So it really broadened their understanding that, hey, volunteers on this campus, while it's great that they're here today, let's think with the long view in mind.
Yep.
And these people are giving their time, could become really good monthly givers.
Yep.
They may, and who knows where that could go. And so it really has helped, I think, having the volunteer piece there and seeing how all these things touch.
That's awesome. Do you also believe, or is there an impact on the folks who are in those same meetings but are revenue people? Do they see the volunteers, or do they see their donors? Is there any positive impact of having their donors volunteer that they might not have considered before?
That's a good question. And I think it took a minute, but I think they would all say now, absolutely. But I don't know that they saw it as quickly. I think it almost surprised them. But after a few months, like I can think of one example actually where this was probably 3 months in, where our volunteer director was giving kind of an update of a group that was coming. And the church she mentioned, so there was several individuals coming, and she was mentioning, we've got these people coming this Saturday. Oh, and this group from this church. And our church engagement person and our major gifts person both heard things mentioned that alerted them. And they said, oh, well, you need to know this. And so there was almost a 5-minute coordinating of, hey, if this person's there, keep this in mind. You need to know, oh, this person set up a estate planning. Well, our volunteer director wouldn't have known that otherwise, Right. And so there was some healthy stuff. And then there's a lot getting in the database. And for those of us, I know some of us love the CRMs, and some, it's like the last thing we want to touch, but man, getting all that data in there, there was a whole lot that we were missing that we didn't know we were missing, getting in the CRM. And now you can look, and our major gift person, they came to that event. Oh, they volunteered, and it paints the bigger picture.
Yeah. There's so much psychology inside what you just said that normally I would go into, but I'm not going to. It's just so positive. Everything you just said in terms of forming someone's identity to be in alignment with your mission is just so very positive. So I want to move to the foster family licensing requirements.
Sure.
That sounds like dry as dirt to me. I just can't even imagine why that would be something under development, number one, and how you can turn it into revenue, number two. So tell that story.
Well, for Katrina, let me say, you are at least the 4th or 5th person who, when they've heard, people who understand our world, they're saying, tell me about how that happened, right? How did foster care get under engagement. And so it is, I will say, very unorthodox in human services world. When we go to conferences, that would be very unusual. And I give all the credit to our president. He just felt a few years ago that we were in kind of a transition stage, and we're in a 10-year strategic plan. So there's a lot of changing pieces happening here. But he felt like for it to go to the next level, for it to become what he felt it could be, he felt like the piece that was missing was not the dotting the I's and the crossing the T's on the licensing requirements. We had those going great. We've got really good people doing that. He just felt like, where will our families come from? Well, for us and our ministry with who we are, we knew most of our people, our families would probably would come from churches. And we've got a lot of church support. A lot of churches in our state are aware of us, at least in our name. And so he felt like, well, this just makes sense that our director of foster care needs to be working with our director of church engagement, and all the marketing, all that needs to be more tied together. And he was right. And so it's been a little over 2.5 years so it's still new. We still got a lot we're learning, but I can say Paula, our director of foster care, she does such a great job that I didn't have to be an expert in foster care. She's got that covered, 30 years of experience. Right. So that worked because she knows it. But there was things that I could help her with that really she was never trained to do. And so we've done some events, and we've really called churches to think broadly about what they can do to help kids from hard places, kids in foster care. What can they do? A church has its own agenda. Pastors have their own plan. They've got their vision statement, and they're not primarily concerned with our vision statement. And so we've kind of always had the philosophy that with churches is, hey, we want to help you do what you feel like God's called you to do, which at some level is to help people in the community. And foster care is something that is near and dear to most pastors or churches' hearts. So we've said we want to help you do that well. And so it was that external piece. And so essentially a foster family, if you think about it, they're a really engaged volunteer. And so it kind of comes back to that piece we talked about. If you're raising your hand and you're saying, we'll take a child into our home, which I think, just off the record, is one of the most incredible things someone could do, is to say, we'll set our comforts aside and step into what could be difficult for the long view in mind. And so foster families, there's not many of them. They're hard to find. If you look in any state, from whoever would listen to this, I can assure you that there's more children needing a home than there are families available to help them. And so there's not many of them out there. But if we'll communicate, if our messaging allows people to see where they could fit into that, and if our churches and our pastors see, hey, we're here to help you. We're here to help your church do what you feel like you're supposed to be doing to help the community. That was huge. And then having foster care, there was just some things that we would think about with events, with raising awareness, with kind of elevating the profile and the need that I think was missing, that really made sense there.
So you answered a question that I think many of us have asked, like, how do I get in a church? How do I get a church to support my mission? There are, tons of nonprofits that would like to accomplish that. And what I think I heard you say is that you aligned, you figured out how to make the missions overlapping. Pastors are always looking for a way to get the congregation on mission, I think is one way I've heard you say it. And because you're so closely aligned with their mission, it fits.
Yes, I think it's speaking, this is not even an idea that was original to me. It's probably been repackaged a number of times, but Donald Miller in Rebuilding Your Story Brand, many have probably read that book. He talks about, he akens it to a blockbuster hit. Like there's kind of a formula that you see in most movies. And that's kind of the case with marketing, and it's speaking their language. And so what does every pastor want? What's the kryptonite that a pastor often feels? Yeah. Most churches feel like, man, I just wish I could get my people to do something, right? I wish I could get the people on the seats to get out in the community. And so we know that at some level, that's a challenge most are dealing with. And so it's to come and say, hey, I got something, I can help you do that. I want to help you help your people get on mission. And I think when he sees that I'm trying, when he or she sees that we're trying to help him fulfill his vision goals. And it's not, hey, help us, would you help us? It's
Yeah.
just totally changed the narrative. So.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, so we got a foster family. They need to have some licensing training hours, and the church is supplying the background and the support for that event, right? And
Yes.
so you've got an actual activity, which is interesting because a lot of nonprofits struggle with whether to invest in activities. Does it actually produce revenue? The immediate ROI sometimes does not pan out. And in your case, there's a negative ROI in the moment, right?
Right.
Okay. And so
Yes.
the ROI is all later.
Yes. But we're seeing it pay off. I'll give you an example. This last year, we did 3 events in 3 cities in 2 days. It was crazy, but it was good. We had host churches. We went to a church. We kind of identified churches in 3 cities. So for us, that's Greenville, Columbia, Charleston. And we said, we went to these churches who were already fairly engaged with us. We knew they were on our side, but we needed to come to them with an ask. And we knew that first ask didn't need to be a financial thing. We don't want to muddy the water and then think we're just trying to get their money. Of course, money is one important piece of a bigger engagement pie. But we felt like the low hanging fruit there would say, hey, would your church host and invite foster families from the community? They don't just have to be fostering with us. They can be any family. We've got a speaker coming in that's got a lot of influence on social media. We've hired her. Would you cover the food and open your building, and we'll handle the programming? And it's a partnership. And all 3 of them agreed and thought it was great. And what pastor doesn't want more people coming to his church on a weekday, right? So it worked. And a few have even joined the church that they came to. They'd never been, now 2 years out. So there was some things that he gained from that, right?
Right.
I can say now we are perfectly primed. 2 of those 3 churches they've started giving to us, and we never even asked them to.
Wow.
One of them is primed for me to all I got to do is set up a meeting and say, hey, we're already doing so much together. I'd show them our annual report, top 25 churches listed. What would it take for you guys to be in this list? And they've got the financial resources to be there.
And they're going to spend it somewhere, right?
They're going to do it somewhere. Why wouldn't they do it with something their church is already? And I'll say this is just coming from a pastor's kid. If you want to find out how churches will help your nonprofit, start speaking their language and give it a couple years and let them see that you're for them before you're about the money. And the money will come. The trends in church giving to anything is all showing a lot of the same thing. And number one is they want to give to less stuff these days compared to this deep and this wide. They want to go this deep and wide, and they're going to pick what's the heartbeat of our people. What are they involved in? And so the community engagement piece has to be central before we get to talking about money, and the money will come.
Yeah. You're effectively the chief development officer, the VP of advancement. You come in with the mindset that ROI is beyond the cash we spent and the cash we got today. Do you ever have to fight that battle? Do you ever have to fight we got to expand our horizon beyond, the 3 months this event happened in to calculate ROI?
Yes. I know anybody watching is like, surely but you know what? I'll say, I dealt with it one time over one situation 4.5 years ago. And within a year in that situation, it was about buying lists. Our ministry had never bought lists. And so I'm coming in, new guy, right, saying, we got to do this. Direct mail is going to stay flat if we don't buy our acquisition. And I'll just say within a year, I didn't get questioned about it. The results spoke for themselves. I didn't have to fight any more battles. And for the most part, I've kind of not had to deal with it. But yes, I think that's normal for people to question that. But the good thing is with foster care, I can tie it to our mission. Hey, I didn't go into it I never went into it promising that we would raise this much money. I went into it saying we need to do this for our foster families. Right. And that was who's going to argue? What financial person is going to argue with that? Right. So,
you're saying something similar to someone else I interviewed recently, Kaylin Hinkle at the Parkinson's Foundation. And one of the things she pointed out to me is that they get similar revenue output from their walks, which are community events. And because it's Parkinson's, there's a pretty deep caregiver network that participates, and also from their mission events. But like you, she sees those as a long-term, the window of time over which you calculate ROI is much longer than, 1 year or sometimes even 2 years. And she does see that. So question. I didn't prep you for this. We'll cut it out later if
Yeah.
we need to.
Yeah.
How do you book the events that you do? Are they revenue or are they mission? Their mission, I would anticipate.
Their mission,
Yeah.
and really the primary purpose is that. But gosh, I see the touch points of those three churches that hosted these events with us.
Mhm.
I mean, we actually created an engagement score sheet that syncs into our CRM. It's actually a whole nother company, and we can, customize it to say if we do this, it's this many points. And,
Yep.
that I would say the highest value of engagement we have with churches really is hosting an event with them. We don't do a lot of it, but, man, we do book it on the mission side, but I already have seen the return in each of those three churches. The givings far outweighing the investment there.
Love it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about specifically the event itself. How do you structure it to take this? I got to do this training. It's a pain because I've got to pack the kids up and I've got I've got to or get childcare.
Mhm.
How do you manage that? How do you turn that into something that's really positive and that the church members who are, in the beginning disconnected from this thing, how do they get connected?
Sure. So with those foster care events, we said, how do we eliminate the friction? And some of this is coming from my fundraising background, right? Like make giving easy. We've all heard that said, we want giving to be easy. Well, we want coming to an event for a foster family to be easy. And we know it's hard to go anywhere when you've got a couple of your own kids and you've got a few in your home that you're caring for that aren't yours biologically. And so we said the number one thing is you got to provide childcare for free. And so the church agreed to do that. That was one of their investments in it. They get their volunteers helping. That's another deep engagement. So now for a couple hours, those kids in foster care, those volunteers in the church, they're seeing it. They're using all their five senses to be exposed to an opportunity and a need and how they can meet it. And then we also said it should be free. We'll have a few no-shows. When you do something for free, you have no-shows, but go into it expecting it. Don't make the financial cost. This isn't about making money today. And really, it's not about that. And then we found a sponsor. We had a group sponsor it, so that alleviated some of the costs. But so we made childcare, we made it free, and then we had a name. You got to put in, as my president says, you got to have some pixie dust. And so we found there's someone who in the foster care world has a lot of following, and we knew that name and the right demographic could maybe attract a crowd. So.
Oh, that's great. So it's fair to say it's fun.
Yes, we want people. We even had a game night. We had a game night there. We brought in a group from Atlanta that did games for 45 minutes. You got a bunch of people coming in. Not all of them know each other. They're all sitting at tables. Some of them know each other, but many of them don't. They made it so fun. They had a game show thing, and it sounded like, how's this going to go? These guys are pros. Yeah. They immediately broke the ice, loosened the room up. And our goal really, like one of the metrics for success for that event is, and this is going to feel not quantitative enough for people probably, it was really like, does our group feel like when people left, did they all left having a good time? and you could tell, like you can tell when people linger, when they want to stick around and talk, when you're almost having to remind them, oh, you need to go get your kids in childcare. It's been 40 minutes and the volunteers got to go home. That's a good thing. And people have a good time. They'll come back.
Love it. Love it. One of the things that we've been studying at Turnkey and talking a lot about is trust. And one of the elements required in order to have trust in the community is that you actually engage with other members of the community. And from what you have described, the church community and your foster family community is growing trust in a pretty rapid and deep way. Is that true? Is that what you've seen?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. It really is a high level of trust. When our ministry, when I can look at the pastor or the leader of any group and say, hey, we're going to take care of your people. When they come here for a volunteer initiative, they're not going to be treated like this was an afterthought. We're going to have a customer service the way Chick-fil-A is with serving food and not questioning people if they say they've left out the fries, or we're going to be that with people on our campus. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way. And over time, you build that trust. And people say, well, we could serve 5 places. They make it really easy to serve. Our people like going there. They enjoy it. They see the kids riding the bikes. Like they feel a part of the mission. And that is so important that they trust us. They trust us with our foster families because our licensing agents do a good job. So when your programs are delivering on the services, it makes the fundraising that much easier to then turn around a few years later and say, hey, man, we're doing this. Hey, what do y'all think about, it takes a lot of money to do what we do. Would you consider financially supporting us? That ask is almost, if I even have to do it at that point,
Right.
it's like, of course, they'll finish the sentence. Usually they're coming to me saying, what more should we be doing?
Oh, that's awesome. Now, I think that most people listening to you can make the jump to other missions and other ways of raising money and delivering on mission. But it feels hard, I think, sometimes. And, when I think about my conversation with Kaylin, what she talked about, which I think relates to what you said, is that at the mission educational events, the reason people would go there, particularly people with Parkinson's, is because they didn't feel embarrassed in that setting. They were, I think she actually said, food falls out my mouth here, it's okay. Because food's falling out of everybody's mouth here.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like what you're saying. And you both are experiencing what sounds like the same results. My question is this. Analytics has gotten easier and cheaper. Are you able to tie it back successfully now? Are you able to see, legacy gifts over time, major gifts? Can you tie them back to these Thrive events?
I think it's broader than just the Thrive events. I think that's one piece of it that plays into the whole engagement strategy with churches. It's still so new that I don't know that I can point to examples. I could give you a story right now that's in my mind, but again, I know it's more qualitative.
Right.
I think though, over the next few years, the results will bear out. I just looked at our church engagement we've only had this engagement piece, the module in our CRM for the last 3 years.
Yep.
But the engagement points on the number of churches has increased year over year steadily, meaning they're doing more with us than they were 3 years ago. And the money is up a little bit from 2 years ago. And if most churches today, some of the stats among what a lot of churches are experiencing with attendance has been down since COVID. And so I see even a slight increase as generally pretty positive. Yeah. That's good, even though it's not big. Yeah. But the piece that's hard to track, and this, Katrina, I think is for people to keep in mind, some of us, we love the data so much, it almost is constricting. And this is where I would caution people listening for whatever little value I can help. It's, a few years ago, I'll use a narrative. A few years ago, we had a family, we had a $25,000 gift come in, end of the year. For us, that's a sizable gift for our size ministry. That was something that, like, if you don't know the name, it's like, wow, I don't know who that is. And so I'd called, it was in December, I called just to say thank you. And what I learned in that phone call, he was appreciated the phone call. Yeah, of course, we try to be generous, and we've done this a few years, different places. And I said, well, what led you to give to us? And he said, well, and he named the family. I'll just call them the Smith family, right, for anonymous purposes. And he said, well, the Smiths go to church with us, and they were a foster family that we serve. And he said, we watch them, and they've had some kids now that they bring to church. And we just, we'd mentioned to them, they mentioned that y'all do a lot of support for them. And so, hey, if y'all are helping them, then we want to help y'all. And it was that simple. And so that's something that we never had any conversation with that person, didn't even know who he would have been. And his wife had felt led because of what he had observed there. And so that's the stuff that you can't really quantify. Like, how often is that happening, right? Even in smaller ways. Now, that was a big gift, so it led to the phone call. But what if it had been a $50 gift? And how many of those are we getting that I'd have never known what sparked it? So.
Yep. I've heard several development officers talk about forensically trying to figure out, where did this donor come from originally? And the answers seem to come in 3 places: mission events, walks, runs, and rides, and a direct response list. But I look forward to the time when we can do that more specifically and come to understand maybe what our pipeline's going to be if we undertake these certain set of activities. Yeah. And if we kill them, what we can expect from having done so, which is one of my fears for community events. That's one of the reasons I was so pleased to hear your story, because I feel like some nonprofits are walking away from the investment in community events, both mission and revenue, because of cost. And in my mind, they're not saving money. They're just losing future money.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Jay, you are fabulous. Thank you so much. Would you be okay if anyone reached out to you if they had questions after this?
Sure. Yeah. Glad to. Yeah. Please share my information. Always glad to help, or either put you in touch with anyone on our team who would even be more versed in it than me. So
you're pretty good.
wow.
Almost right. You're pretty good.
Oh,
Also, when we send out this recording, we're going to send a link to a piece that Jay released that is really phenomenal, that really demonstrates how a church can surround a foster family. And for me, when I looked at that, I saw, giving is a behavior. Giving money is a behavior, giving time is a behavior, giving support is behavior. And that video really demonstrated it in a way that just made me cry and ruined my makeup. Thank you for that.
Well, that is strategic, right? If you can bring people to a place emotionally where they feel like the tears are going to come, usually they want to take an action step after. So
excellent. All right. My name is Katrina VanHuss. I'm with Turnkey For Good. Thanks to Adam O'Brien and I Donate for supporting this content. Jay Boyd from Connie Maxwell Children's Ministries. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
Hey, thank you so much. And let me just say this, and this is unprompted, unpaid, of course, but I Donate has been an incredible partner, and we could not be raising the money. The results we're seeing on fundraising are fantastic. Adam's going to kill me for saying that, but I got to say, those guys are great. And if you want to get frictionless giving, if you want your people to have the best experience, that I can't find a better company than I Donate to work with. So
that is awesome. And you're right. He's far too humble to say that, but I appreciate you doing it. All right, my friend. Thank you so much.